Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of MGR Unplugged. I'm here with David again. And
Hello.
Hey, David, how are you? We have a lot of things this week again. Last week, it's interesting that we started talking about. We record this on Thursdays every week, and when we talked last Thursday, none of the major riots and disturbances and everything had happened just yet.
We always record this Thursday mornings.
Right.
And so unfortunately, we actually mentioned it very briefly, the George Floyd thing. But we didn't actually, the riots hadn't happened yet, basically. There was protests in Minnesota, but it wasn't nationwide or anything like that yet. So
obviously, we did touch a little bit on social media and the spread of news and the good and bad uses of social media. But I think there's so much that's happened over the last week that I think, he and I have been talking about it. Everybody's been listening to whatever sources you listen to, whether you're watching news or your favorite podcasts and internet, whatever. So I think I wanted to get into it a little more because I'm really curious and interested in expanding the debate about this this week that has been really incredible in many ways. So let's just plan on that, David, and let's get started.
None of you people can tell me to stop. Lower the lights down. Hand over my crown. Hand over my heart. I do this for my town. I do this for my crowd. So turn me up real loud. My time, my time. None of you people can tell me to stop.
All right, welcome back, David. What? Let me ask you this first. From all the events that we've been going through over the last 7 days, really, what is the thing that has surprised you the most? That you've been more
surprised me the most,
appalled by?
That's two different questions. Appalled or surprised?
Well, I like to kind of combine the two. Okay,
I have kind of two answers. Appalled. Obviously, the most appalling thing was the video itself of George Floyd.
Yeah, but that
dying.
Yes, that actually you did watch it before last week. I didn't watch it before. I think I watched it after. That's totally unreal what happened. So, but I want to move forward to the events and the reactions or lack of from the last 7 days.
Surprising? I don't think anybody expected it to blow up worldwide, really.
Yeah,
like that.
no, it's
even
becoming
yesterday
worldwide.
I saw videos in London and Paris and New Zealand and Amsterdam, and
Yeah.
it's pretty crazy. So no, I did not expect, obviously, a guy dying in Minnesota to cause worldwide riots. Obviously, it's not this particular instance. It's the straw that broke the camel's back type of thing, where it's this on top of so many other things. I also think that undeniably that because this happened at the same time that there's mass unemployment, we've just gone through a pandemic, people have been at home, frustrated, upset, depressed, all sorts of things, that there's, I think, a mixture of emotions that basically caused all this to happen. And that's why I think it's happening around the world too. Because normally, like when we had Ferguson a few years ago, that was an isolated, it was a nationwide story, but it was happening in Ferguson, Missouri. And it definitely was not happening anywhere else in the U.S. and definitely not outside other countries.
Well,
but
that's
this one spread everywhere.
That's one of the things that I wanted to expand on too, because to me, and this is a huge conversation that we started last week too, we've come to a point where everything, good or bad, gets blown out of proportion. And I don't know where to point the finger at for this situation. I don't know if it's the fact that social media is so spread now and it's become like the open forum for everybody to explore everything. Because you mentioned Ferguson, and I remember that. Obviously, that was just that was 2014, I believe.
I think so.
So, and that's a good case because obviously Obama was president then, and Obama was basically accused of not acting fast enough because he was the first black president, and that was an 18-year-old kid that was basically killed also by a cop. and Obama delegated to Eric Holder, who was the Attorney General, to be the spokesperson of that. And people were actually saying, where is Obama? Obama is not just a black president. It's a president that was supposed to take care of these racial issues. And then even Holder said, well, there's a very touchy situation. And it took Obama days to even appear and react to this. And there were riots and there were things, but it was never so expanded. And we're talking 6 years ago, okay? And with a black president. And people forget that it was a very similar situation, and our black president didn't act fast enough, and the media just kind of talked about it for a week or whatever, and then it just disappeared. So I don't know what's caused this situation to be, when you separate the facts or what happened from the after effects, what happened is terrible. The fact that we had those things happening, police brutality, about cop, everything else, the other 3 cops that were just now convicted again for the first time. But all that is.
I was thinking about why this incident was caused more outrage than others. And I think it's a combination of the things that I said. The unemployment, the pandemic, basically everything building up. Obviously that this has happened many, many times where an unarmed black man has been killed. But I also think that the video itself, if you see a video of someone get shot, it's not easy to watch, but it's easier to watch because it's almost instantaneous, basically. But this particular video, the reason why it was so hard to watch is you literally watch a man sit there with a knee on his neck for 5 minutes as the life just drains out of him. And it was so, because the defense that you can make for a cop in this situation where they shoot someone that they shouldn't have shot is that, and I'm not defending them, but I'm saying the argument that can be made is that it was an in-the-moment reaction. And listen, it is true. Cops' jobs are hard and they're scary, and they don't know who is armed or unarmed. And so in the moment, they get scared and they shoot a guy that they shouldn't have shot. But in the case of this one, the guy was unarmed. He's on the ground. He already has handcuffs on. And he just murdered him. I mean, he murdered him.
Well, he did.
In cold blood.
There's no
and
question.
I think the fact that was on video, the fact that you have other cops standing there doing nothing, people yelling and hysterically on video saying, you're killing him, him crying out, and they just murdered him. I think that it was so just cold-blooded. I mean, I don't know how else to say it.
There's no. I mean,
and so I think that's why
sounds
this
like a
video
cliche,
was so
but
horrible.
there's no words to describe that particular scene. And unfortunately, that one was filmed and videotaped everywhere. And I'm sure there's similar scenes that happen elsewhere.
And I think it goes beyond even just a racial thing. Part of it is obviously the racial injustice that has been happening for a long time, but also just, listen, I'm not black, but just to see anybody, there's kind of 2 frames of viewing it. One is obviously the police brutality, racial injustice aspect, which is very real. But then there's the other view where I see it as just the authority abusing the power and basically holding a man under his knee, basically holding an innocent man under his knee. And it's like that image is very powerful in the sense of an abuse of an authority's power, regardless of race, is something that
sure. And that's why
really,
I was kind of wondering if the reaction would have been the same if it was the opposite. If it was a black cop killing a white guy.
No, it wouldn't have been.
And it wouldn't have.
But that doesn't mean the reactions are unwarranted. Obviously we can get into the rioting and the looting and all of that.
I want to get to that.
Yeah, obviously, no. Looting a small business who had nothing
but
to do with it.
let's back up a little bit.
Okay.
So the initial fact is obviously the murder. Let's call it as it is. That was murder. And the other 3 accomplices were standing there doing nothing. I mean, I understand to a certain extent, if a cop is in the heat at the moment, is putting his knee, the guy was passed out basically for 3 minutes, and the cop didn't even know it, apparently, according to the autopsy, stuff like that. But
Did you know it?
He didn't have a pulse. I mean, the other cop checked his pulse. He says he's gone. But I don't know if he knew after. It was 8 minutes and 46 seconds or something.
Right, you know, I mean, if you
And
put
after,
your knee,
yeah,
choke someone
for
for 5 minutes, you know they're gonna die. I mean, it's not
yeah,
that
I mean, the guy
complicated.
was screaming for his life and then stopped. So obviously something happened, and he held his knee down for even 3 more minutes when the guy was basically already lifeless. But the other 3 guys standing there should have been a little more
Right.
cool-headed and say, "Hey, dude, back off. Okay, we got him already. He's face down, handcuffed, and for Christ's sake, he only had like a fake bill or something. You know, he's not like fucking killed somebody." So that's total brutality. The fact that people were screaming, passing by. I mean, everybody has phones and films things all the time, and they're saying, "You're killing this guy." I mean, I actually was thinking, what would I have done if I see that?
I thought that too.
I said I would have tackled the cop.
I like to think in my head, oh, I would have just, even though I probably would get arrested or something.
I know.
I would try to go push him off. I like to think that I would do that. I don't know. It's always hard when
I
you're
know.
not in the real situation versus in
I
the
know.
hindsight.
I'm the same way. Like I'm thinking, okay, well, that happens when I'm like shopping or something, and I see that, and I hear the guy, and I would have just go there a little more close, and tell the other cops. I mean, I would have done something. I'm sure. Now, physically, I don't know, because then the cops just take you down.
I mean,
and then,
they were yelling, but
Yeah.
they weren't listening.
Yeah.
And I like to think, you know, like watching the video, I was literally, as I was watching the video, I was like, someone go just fucking run and push the cop off him or something. And yeah, I know you're going to get arrested. You are, obviously, because you're basically assaulting an officer.
Well, in that case, you
But-
may even get shot. I mean, you're attacking a police officer.
know.
So, I mean,
But so I like to think I do that, but I can't say that I would do
right,
that,
right.
you
But
know?
the thing, these guys are trained, okay? And the other 3 guys are standing. And I'm glad that they got convicted too, because it's like, guys.
I know,
mean,
especially
I understand maybe
the guy who was the Asian cop who was right at the front.
Right.
He looked, you know, in the video, he like looks back at the guy on the ground, sees that he's basically dying, and then just turns around.
Right. So,
You know?
we all. I don't think there's any disagreement from anybody in the world that was just basically murder. Okay. So, that is what it is. Now, after that, you have the reaction, and the reaction basically is, okay, here we go. We have racism in America again.
The problem too is this situation is different because it's just cold-blooded murder. But even in the situations where, let's say, someone gets shot, and it's like a reaction in the moment, they shouldn't have done it, but they did it. And there, you know, once you shoot the gun, there's nothing you can do. The problem is that, you know, it's well known that very, very, very often the cops get off. They get away with it, basically.
Yeah.
Nothing happens to them. And that's almost more of the outrage. It's like, we know, it's the same way of like, you know, murder is illegal in the United States, but there's still murder. You know, you can't expect nothing bad to ever happen, but you can expect justice to be brought upon the people who commit those
But again,
bad
I wanted to
actions.
separate the actual fact of this particular situation. Then you have demonstrations that are against what happened to Mr. Floyd.
But part of what I'm
but
saying
let me see
is-
1 second. And then we also have the racism issue or problem that we had in America, basically in the world, to be honest. But
Yeah, in the world,
for a long,
sure.
long time, and then it flares up again with these things. So first you have the peaceful demonstrations, which is the like the first stage of this, where people start demonstrating, saying, okay, we need to stop, one, in this case, police brutality, which is this particular case. In the wider spectrum, we need to stop being racist, okay? I mean, there's, as you said, I'm white too, and I can never understand or fully understand or feel like a black person growing up in a racist society. But it's like a daily thing. I mean, I have many friends that are different races, and then they say, yeah, it's not like one thing. It's like there's no a day that goes by that you don't feel kind of like a touch of racism against you. It's not your friends. It's just somebody that looks at you the wrong way, you know, things like that. And that in fucking 21st century, in 2020, is just
Right.
to me is unreal.
Right.
Okay?
I got pulled over a few months ago. I wasn't like nervous, basically. I said, okay, I got pulled over for speeding, and that was it. And I wasn't nervous for a second of like, oh, I need to be careful. I don't know what this cop's going to do. But I didn't think about that, basically.
Right.
And if I was black, I probably would.
Right.
And that's the difference, basically.
And that's why you start thinking, and this is totally off the cuff, but I was thinking the other day, forget vaccines and shots or whatever, or inventions and all that stuff. We should have this kind of implant at birth that makes us all colorblind, so to speak. Not realistically, but seriously, it's like we need to invent something that says, okay, just because you see a person across from you that is this way, that race, that whatever, that religion, that just is another person. Okay, treat them all the same. Like I love to do business sometimes on the phone because it's like I kind of picture what the person is kind of, we do a lot of things on the phone with clients, prospects, whatever, and I don't even know what the person looks like until much later. And it's like, oh, you can kind of tell by the accent or something if they're from here, from there, or whatever. But I'm sure they'll figure out where I'm from. But there's a beauty on not knowing the person's background, and then when you're in person with another person of different ethnic background, whatever, why would you treat them differently? To me, it's like if somebody says, "Oh, I have brown eyes or blue eyes." Okay, fine. What else? It's like I don't give a fuck what color your eyes are. Why would I care about what color is your skin? But the demonstrations are first for the event that happened. Secondly, for the wider spectrum of racism, and then that's the peaceful demonstrations. People start demonstrating. They go out and they say, "Yes, you know what? I'm gonna put my voice out there," and everybody gets together in a peaceful manner. Which is not even getting into which we will do later with the COVID and all this social distancing being broken rules and all that, and they start demonstrating. But then you have the next phase where it gets violent. And it gets violent by people that are not the peaceful demonstrators that went out in the beginning. It's because all these demonstrations, and they happen in all the world, get infiltrated with other people that have no fucking interest in the George Floyd. They may not even know what the fuck is going on. They just go there and they try to instigate violence for their own benefit. And that's the part that we need to annihilate, that we need to stop, because it hurts everybody. It hurts the demonstrators that are trying to make a point, and it hurts the cities, it hurts the business, it hurts everybody. And that's the part that I think we're not doing a good job separating. And by we means everybody, especially the media and social media and everybody that highlights those violent riots, as opposed to the people that are actually trying to peacefully say, hey, we're not fixed here, okay? We still have an issue. And this is just, like you said, another sample of the issue. But we have a lot of work to do. But when the whole rhetoric is dominated by fires and looting and backing trucks into stores and violence and all that stuff, then it's like, what's going on here? It gets out of control. And that is the thing that is, when I asked you in the beginning what is surprising you, that is what is surprising me. That we start with a little, an issue, and then it escalates into something else, and then you have a fire, and then obviously you need to call the fire department to put out the fire, and at that point it's too late. The fire department comes to your house when it's on fire, and they don't give a fuck about your house, whatever, goods. They need to put out the fire. They're going to dig holes, let the air breathe out, blah, 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 blah. They do whatever they have to put out the fire. And that's what I think we're in a stage now where we're trying to put out this fire, and then it's too late to try to be nice or whatever. At this point, we can prevent the next fire from happening, but right now we need to put out this fire. So anyways, that's kind of my opinion on this escalation of situations. How you have an initial phase, and
it's
then how it goes.
unfortunate that there's people who are just using this as an opportunity to basically loot and steal, and they don't care about the issue. They're just saying the cops are overwhelmed, so I can probably get away with this. That's basically what they're saying.
Yeah, you see a 25-year-old white kid or black kid or Asian kid, I don't care, going into a Nike store and coming out with a pair of Air Jordans. That guy doesn't give a fuck about George Floyd or whatever. He's taking advantage of the situation. He's not helping. And even the people that are peacefully demonstrating know that. And they're like, dude, you're fucking us our demonstration, right. So that's the real upsetting thing, that people are so, I don't even know what word to use, so gutless or whatever, that they say, okay,
But
forget.
it is a small percentage of the people.
Of course, that's the issue. That's exactly the problem. That is a small percentage, but it's a small percentage compared to the large percentage that is doing a nice job, demonstrating peacefully as they have the right to do. But that small percentage gets this high percentage of news. That's all you see: the fires, the looting, the demonstrations, the fires here, the police riots there, the violence. At that point, what do you want the police to do? The police is overwhelmed. When you have a massive amount of whatever, 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 demonstrators, and then they're all mixed up, and you can tell the good from the bad because they are like all mixed up. So you need to stop that kind of violence. And then when they are overwhelmed, because I mean, the police doesn't always. I mean, there's a police force, but it's not enough to tackle hundreds of thousands of demonstrators going violently. And I mean, you see streets of like 5th Avenue, 6th Avenue, Manhattan, and all that stuff. I mean, they're like, it's like fucking Fallujah. I mean, it's like somebody just dropped bombs left and right with all the displays and stores shattered and everything. It's like, what the fuck does that have to do with George Floyd?
Right.
You know? So yeah, that to me is pretty amazing that we are the most developed country in the world, yet we behave like fucking developing countries sometimes when it comes to these things, as opposed to doing things in a more civilized manner and letting people that have a point and have something to say demonstrate and prove it. I mean, there are people that were laying down saying, I can breathe, you know, like a demonstration. That was beautiful. There was other demonstrations that you see with cops and civilians together saying, hey, we're going to get over this. And that was beautiful. But you don't see much of that on TV. All you see is that, like you said, I mean, what do you see about things happening in Paris or in London or in other countries that are not even related? Same thing. They use that excuse just to go out, and most of them are like infiltrated professional rioters, you know, just doing that shit, destroying property and stealing. I mean, and I agree that part of that is the fact that we've been so confined. I mean, this year 2020 so far, socially has been nothing but fucked up. You know, we've gone from one thing to the next, and now people have been, their business, they lost their jobs. We have 40 plus million unemployed people. They don't even know they're going to be back. They lost, a lot of small businesses have lost their businesses, just trying to reopen now after with all these strict rules about you have a restaurant, 30%, 40% capacity, you have a store, you do this, do that, and now you find your whole business destroyed. So
let's talk about the pandemic. I understand it's a sensitive topic because I get, and I totally understand that people say we have to go now, protest now. We can't wait. We can't do, you know, I understand. But what happened to social distancing? I mean, just a week ago, 2 weeks ago, I mean, the same people who were saying we need to stay, you better be wearing a mask, you better stay home, blah, 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 all these things.
All these rules. I mean, we had these rules as far as how
we were going to go in stages.
How this, yeah.
Even in Paris, you know, there was like hundreds of thousands of people in the streets in Paris. And I was like, wasn't France just on total lockdown like 3 weeks ago? And like totally heavily affected just a few weeks ago? And they were opening very slowly. And all of a sudden there's 100,000 people in the middle of Paris, shoulder to shoulder. Mm-hmm. I don't know how I mean, there's either two things that are going to happen, basically. Either one, the virus is going to spike back up again. I mean, it's going to happen if it is as contagious as we think it is. Or two, if it doesn't, then I think we can probably just go back to life as normal. Because if with all of this that's been happening, no social distancing at all, basically, the opposite. You know, I told you the other day, I said, you know, we basically have agreed concerts and sporting events and anything with mass groups of people aren't going to happen this year. Maybe next year they'll come back. But this is happening with mass groups of people. So if it doesn't spread like crazy because of this, then we could probably go back to normal because then the virus is way less dangerous than we thought.
It's the same thing.
It's going to be one of those two
We're talking
things.
in California when they decide to open the beaches, close the beaches, only for walking, but not for laying down in the sun, you know, things like that. And all of a sudden, everybody's demonstrating there. So that is another big question mark as far as what's going to happen with people demonstrating like this. Yeah, some of them were masked.
I mean,
whatever.
even in New York, which is the hardest hit, I mean, people were flooding the streets in New York.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So we'll see what happens. But yeah, I mean, it's really a binary thing. It's either going to be a mass spike, if it is as bad as we at least thought it was, or if there's not a big spike, then we could probably go back to normal. I mean, if with all this non-social distancing, if there is not a big spike in the virus, then we can probably go back to normal. I mean,
yeah, I think, well, the more important, the more shocking thing for me is that we've gone for about 8 to 10 weeks with nothing but pandemic, COVID-19 in the news. And then now,
I also think people are afraid because they don't want to seem insensitive to talk about this part. Because I haven't seen politicians talk about it. I haven't seen the media talk about it. Basically saying, hey, the virus, it's terrible what happened, but the virus doesn't give a shit. The virus doesn't care about your protests or if you're upset about things that are happening in the world. It's just going to take... The virus is the ultimate opportunist.
Well, I mean, when you think about it...
You think looters are opportunistic? Wait until you see the virus.
Well, exactly. I mean, you think about it, like we're protesting or demonstrating for one tragic death, and the consequences of this could be what you call the unintended consequences. You could have many more thousands of deaths as a result of the demonstrations, including, I mean, like you said, the virus is totally colorblind too, so I mean, it's going to kill blacks, whites, whatever, So if the virus was so lethal and contagious, as we have told, and we've seen that is based on the number of cases, and all these demonstrators are shoulder to shoulder, no social distancing, no protection, nothing. Then if we see the spike, and then as a result of that, forget about one person dying in brutal consequences or brutal reasons, but now we're going to have another thousands of people all over the country, at least for us, and maybe the world, also dying or being sick or with repercussions, whatever, as a result of this. Where do you draw the line? And that's where I'm trying to figure out. Like, I don't know exactly. I mean, obviously it's an election year, and every news media organization that, whether they're aligned right, aligned left, aligned whatever they want, or every politician, like you said, is gonna use this as another opportunity to blame Trump and blame the Republicans and blame this and blame that. And it's like, for fuck's sake, I'm so tired of that shit. Seriously, it's like, okay, like you said for Ferguson, I mean, Obama was 8 years president of the United States, and he tried a lot of things, but he couldn't get everything done. And I
want to say this, and I'm not a black person, so I can't speak to this personally, but I know black people who have said to me that they said that they were a little disappointed.
Yeah, no, that's normal. That's normal.
That Obama, basically, I think a lot of people thought when Obama got elected that, okay, finally the racial issues in the United States are over. And I think that's, just because you have a black president, I don't think you can expect that racial issues go away. But I think they expected massive improvement. And I don't think we really saw massive improvement.
No, and that's one of the biggest criticisms of Obama. He was there for 8 years. And again, I'm not going to get into what he did right or wrong or whatever, but in this particular case, hasn't changed much, okay?
Now, whatever happened on the other side,
whatever happened now, I mean, if Trump was there until 2016 or January 17 or whatever, this is 2020, okay? 3 years later, it's not everything that he supposedly may have fixed, it changed, okay? It's never been fixed.
I think the problem, too, on the other side of the coin is that I think Trump's response has been completely backwards, basically. He only cares about showing might and force and not at all about unity. And I've been always very fair and trying to be very apolitical when I look at a guy like Trump or any politician as to what I think about them. And I've been very clear that on the things that I think Trump has done right and wrong. And I think the biggest thing for me that he's done right is everything on China. That he was very right on that, and that now both parties are in alignment against China when before him they were not. And that we were too easy on China before Trump. And I think he's done that well. Mm-hmm. But my biggest criticism from day one of him, and even more so now, has been that when you're the president of the United States, you are the leader of everybody, not just the leader of the people that voted for you. And that even if basically he knows that all he has to do is basically make sure his base comes out and votes for him and that he'll get reelected. And that's what politicians do, right? Politicians like Bernie Sanders knows that a conservative would never vote for him. So he's just trying to rile up his base. And Trump does the same thing. But once you get elected, even though you know that politically people on the left are never going to vote for you, you are still their president. You still have to lead them. Mm-hmm. You'll still need to make at least an effort to unify. If you make the effort and they don't unify and they don't, okay, fine, then fine. Then that's their decision. There's nothing more you can do. But you have to at least make the effort. And he has not made any effort to unify. And that's been my biggest criticism from day one. And then this situation exemplified that to the max, where he basically showed almost no sympathy for the cause and just basically said, when the looting starts, the shooting starts, stuff like that. And that's been my biggest criticism from day one, that he just basically hasn't been a leader. He's been a politician. And it's disappointing because the reason why people elected him was specifically because he was not a politician. But he's acted like one in the sense that he doesn't care about leading people. He cares about getting reelected. And that's his biggest fault, in my opinion.
But on the counter argument for that, I will say that the opposition or the Democrats are also.
I'm not saying the Democrats are any better,
right?
But I'm saying, listen, I also think a lot of frustration is that ultimately, come November, the choice is going to be between Trump and Biden, and I think honestly, a lot of people are in the same. In 2016 was similar. A lot of people didn't like Trump or Hillary. And I think this year, even more so, a lot of, I think the majority of Democrats, if you ask them, is Biden your number one choice for president of the Democrats? I think the majority of Democrats would say no.
Well, but that's the thing that I was thinking, okay, well, it's always very easy to criticize what other people are doing or not doing, but what would you do differently? And I'm thinking, okay, well, Biden is now criticizing Trump, obviously.
Well,
that's his
what
job.
would I do differently?
But at the same time,
I would go last Thursday or Friday when the riots started happening and give an address immediately that was incredibly sympathetic and empathetic for the cause, but also asking people in sincerity, without threat, to please do not hurt small businesses and loot. That is not helping the cause. And if it gets out of control, then we will have to take stricter measures. I don't want to take stricter measures, but I will have to if it means I have to keep people safe. That's the speech.
Well, he did before.
No, he didn't.
No. No, I know he didn't do that. What I'm saying is that, and I'm not defending freaking Trump. I don't give a fuck. But you remember on Thursday is when he was flying to Florida for the NASA rocket launch.
Yeah, his SpaceX stuff.
And then that was basically...
Which, by the way, totally got... Unfortunately, that was like a big deal. We're Americans back in space for the first time in a long time.
Yeah.
And that totally got overshadowed, unfortunately.
Right, unfortunately, yeah. So he went there, nothing happened, had to fly back, then things started escalating. He basically was talking to the governors, which is being consistent with that. Even with the pandemic, he said, I'm going to let the governors decide what to do with each state. And then the governors were not even unified. And then specifically the governor in
but the governors aren't supposed to be unified. That's why we have states.
Well, right. I mean,
you can't expect them to all be unified.
I know, but basically that's when he started saying the governors are weak. And he had a call with them, and he said that. And then on Saturday, he goes back to Florida again for the launch. And then he made a statement, but it was, as you said, it was lost in space, basically. Literally. It was lost in the SpaceX launch. And then everything got out of proportion, and then that's what we started doing. To his fault, he also makes these all caps tweets with when the looting starts and all that stuff. But then is when I say is that the phase 2 where the peaceful demonstrators started and then started getting violent. And then is when you need to take action. And then you start being this little fire that is breaking out, and you're like, okay, that's when somebody needs to act there before it gets out of hand.
Because he said that, when did he say that? I think it was on Friday, right? When it was still mostly Minnesota.
Right.
I think if he doesn't say that, we don't see such a mass reaction across the country.
Yes. Again, I don't know, because the problem is that it's very hard to filter the bad seeds within the demonstrators from the good guys. When you have a demonstration and you say, okay, we're going to gather whatever, this avenue, this park, to remember George Floyd and all that stuff, everybody goes, and then you don't know who's going to start rioting and all that stuff versus who's going to be there with this sign just saying, hey, I don't have any intent. You can tell when you leave your house. If you go leave your house to a demonstration, a peaceful demonstration with a baseball bat, you don't have very good intentions. If you leave your house with your little sign or something and your face mask and all that stuff, just to hold hands these days, but just kind of walk and chant or whatever.
Holding hands, okay?
Right. So then you have a good intention. But when you leave that and you say, yeah, I'm going to join there, and you dress like a military guy with all kinds of weapons and rocks and things, and you see guys that are pounding on the ground trying to break the ground into rocks so people have something to throw and all that stuff, then, and if I'm the cops and say, okay, well, these guys are not, and then they also cannot tell the difference, So, but back to your point about the elections and all that stuff, or Biden, is like, Biden just 2 days earlier made a stupid comment too about
if you're not
if you don't know who to vote for, I'm paraphrasing, but if you know whether to vote for me or Trump, you ain't black.
Right.
And it's like, okay, nice. And even the Democrats were cringing, and it's like, I feel insulted with that. It's like, okay, but is that the guy that was going to react better?
Right.
To this?
And then you have the whole sexual assault scandal that
too.
A lot of people are basically, and this is very hypocritical, especially people who were leaders in the Me Too movement saying, yes, basically, I forget who it was, but there was someone who was a very prominent Me Too leader, and they said, I believe Tara Reid, but I'm still voting for Biden. Okay, that makes you a hypocrite.
Right.
You can't be pro Me Too and pro basically, I don't know how you want to say it, the anti-sexual assault movement. But then when it's convenient, but when it's inconvenient, basically say, I don't care. That's not being principled.
And
that's being a hypocrite.
but reality is that when people vote, everybody has an opinion, a public opinion. When it comes to your privacy, when you're
of course
pouring your vote, you are as selfish as you can be.
Yes.
And you see a lot of people that are Democrats that they
say famously in 2016 there was a lot of what they call closeted Trump supporters. Mm-hmm. Basically, people in, like, especially in like Hollywood, in Silicon Valley, in places where it's very liberal, so they don't want to openly say they're pro-Trump, but they voted for Trump. Basically,
I mean, you can see the numbers, you can see the ballots, and you say, okay,
I mean, he won the election, so people had to vote for him.
You know what? That tax break sounds very good. This other thing sounds very good. So selfishly, for my own benefit, I'm gonna vote for Trump. Now, fuck, I'm liberal and I love Democrats and all that stuff. But for one day, I'm gonna vote for Trump. And then guess what? You have 4 years.
I really hope that a third party, like maybe a Mark Cuban, someone runs, because I really think they could win. I I really do. I don't think that Biden's going to win. That's the thing. Like, I don't think if it's just Biden versus Trump, I think Trump's going to get reelected.
But that's my point. And we may have we'll take a little break and discuss this later. But one thing that I wanted to discuss too is, okay, so let's just say that Trump is not the best for this situation. I think he's good for trade. He's good for all economic.
Like I said, I
economic
always put
growth.
I try to be as fair as possible on trade. The things that he's done very well that I totally agree with are China's the biggest one. The biggest, I would say, push that he's made that has been widely successful to the point that now Democrats and Republicans agree that we need to be hard on China. He was totally right on that. I think on NATO, he was right. Hey, we're protecting all these countries. They're not paying their dues. Mm-hmm. They need to pay their dues. And he was right on that. So I'm totally open. But as a leader, as a unifying leader, he has not been.
He's not. So
at all.
We can't deny that the economy was doing great.
No. That's the other thing.
Well, hold on a second.
He's been on the Fed.
Yeah.
He tried to artificially pump the economy.
Right, because
And
that's
that's
his
totally
because that's
irresponsible.
that's his only that he gauges his presidency by the economy. He
By the
says
stock market, not by the economy,
by the
by the
market.
stock
Well, which is what people relate the economy, but say okay, the stock market is high, meaning your 401k.
He just tweeted today actually about the stock market.
401k is high. You're saving more money. You have more. Unemployment was an all-time low. Everybody's employed. All that stuff. All that stuff was good, and nobody thought, okay, well, we're not gonna have a recession until probably after the elections because he's gonna try to do whatever he can to keep this situation going on until that's his strength point. When he goes saying, hey, this is how we left the economy. Now we're stronger. We don't depend on China. We have the market that is up to the roof in new records and all that stuff. And so, yeah, for social issues, he's not the most diplomatic guy. He's not the right guy. But, and this is for the next segment, I don't know who is the better person. Definitely, I don't see Biden being a better president in this particular situation than he'll be better diplomatically, not specifically as far as taking actions. So, but let's leave that for the next
I have thoughts.
after the break. I'm sure you do. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back. David, we were talking about pretty much what Trump did right, what Trump did wrong.
We were talking Biden versus Trump. What's the answer?
Well, but by leading into that is like, okay, if you were as easy as just saying, okay, we have a person that is not doing a good job or not in this particular case, and then we replace the person and everything is solved, then we can just do it. We have an opportunity in 5 months. But we know it's not that easy.
Okay.
So right now we have two people that are fighting to be that person in the future in the next 4 years, and one of them is the current president, which apparently a lot of people think that he didn't do a good job, and then including myself, as far as the voice of how he's the leadership part. Yeah, I think when I say note, I think sometimes because he likes to do these tweets, he becomes more of an instigator than a peaceful, pacifying person. Because he sends these tweets like law and order, all caps.
I know, exactly.
I'm like, what the fuck, dude?
Who's that?
Okay, what does that mean? Are you gonna be now? Everybody's gonna be wearing guns, and then just come with a proper message. I understand tweets that you send. Sometimes you send tweets with two or three in a sequence or something, and maybe it's better to just appear on TV or whatever media you want. I mean, he was doing daily press conferences for the pandemic. I watched about a dozen of those,
and he didn't do.
And they were extra long. Yeah,
this until was it Monday when he did it?
Yeah,
when he announced, was it Monday or Tuesday when he announced the military?
I think it was
Tuesday. Actually,
I think it was Tuesday.
That was the first time he gave like a national address.
Right,
like 4 days after it
happened.
Yeah,
4 days. Yeah. So he was doing like daily press conferences with the whole team and everything, and Q&As. They were long. They were like 2 hours or something between that and the questions and all that and the press. So obviously he hasn't handled this thing properly. Not to mention, not to excuse him that other or compared to other presidents that may have handled it differently, better, worse, whatever. But anyways, come November, we have two options. What we have now, what we could have in the future, which is, it looks like it will be Biden, even though it's not officially nominated yet. But this is my problem. I don't think Biden will do a better job than Trump as far as eradicating racism. Okay, I'm not talking about the reaction.
No. Yeah, Biden would not be as inflammatory, but the idea that Biden would get anything done, not just racism. I mean anything. Period. I mean, I don't think Biden's going to be a strong leader at all. I mean, he's senile. So okay, my answer.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really frustrated because where everything I hear from very smart people is like, we have to choose the lesser of the evils of the least bad choice.
Okay.
It's like we don't have a guy that we look forward to.
But here's the answer. You don't. The answer is don't vote for Biden or Trump. That's the answer. I think okay. This is my
how do you do that?
This is my
show
belief.
Up, or do you vote blank, or how's that?
This is my belief. I think that the Republicans and the Democrats, and I'm talking the parties, not the people, the voters. I'm talking about the parties themselves, the GOP and the Democratic Party. Okay, I think that as much as they might dislike each other, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. and they know that as long as they are able to maintain their duopoly, they won't always be in power. You might have years where Democrats are in power, some years where Republicans in power, but they know each other. They know each other very well, and they know that, you know what, Trump is president now, Obama was president before, we might have a Democrat president again. Congress is Republican now, next time it'll be Republican or it'll be Democrat, whatever, right? It happens. It goes in cycles. And they know that as much as they hate each other, as long as they keep things the way they are, that they always maintain power, that it's always going to be one of those two. But that's not what's best for the country. That's what's best for them. And that they actually work together, I think, to behind closed doors to basically maintain a duopoly. That's what I honestly think. And that's why everything, whether it's a pandemic, whether it's racial issues, whether anything gets divided into left versus right narratives.
Well, how do you
because I'll give you a perfect example. Racial issues have always been much more voiced and pushed as a part of the I don't want to say agenda, but as a part of the goals to amend of the Democratic Party. And there's this narrative that is, if you are Republican or if you are conservative, that you are racist. And vice versa, too. Like, for example, if you are Democrat or liberal, that you are, like, totally socialist and you don't want capitalism or anything. But that's just not true. You can be a conservative you can have conservative views on monetary policy. I believe in more conservative views on monetary policy, even though Republicans have totally thrown it out the window too. They don't give a shit about spending anymore either. But I think that the Fed is way out of control. I think that, yeah, we need to actually manage the deficit and our debt. Believe it or not, we don't have unlimited money, right? I believe those things. But I also believe that we should have racial equality and that there is racial injustice in this country.
But let me ask you just said something, 1 second, that it looks like racism is associated with the political party here.
Yes.
Like Republicans seem to be more racist.
Yes.
In
and
general.
That's because, let me say, there are certainly Republicans that are racist, 100%. But not even close to all Republicans are racist.
No, obviously, it's always a very small minority. But this is the only.
And I'm not Republican, but
this is one of the differences. Like I come more from a European background, and I can tell you that race issues in Europe are a social issue, not so much a political issue. Like when you have demonstrations or racial things in Europe, whether it's Spain, France, Italy, Germany, England, it's not so much that it's the conservatives or this. I mean, first of all, most of European countries have a multi-partisan system.
Nobody in Europe has two parties. They have like 10.
Well, I mean, England, the UK is closer, but yeah, they have a lot of different multi-partisan democracies. But nobody says, there's racism in Europe too. I mean, you have
there's
like
racism everywhere.
Everywhere, exactly.
It's not an American thing.
But it's a big issue
thing.
too. I mean, even in soccer games that you see European Champions Leagues and all that stuff, they have these things like say no to racism, all that World Cups, all that stuff. But it's never something that you relate too much to whoever is in power. Because you have a coalition government between social democrats and conservatives and blah, blah. It's like, okay, we're governing the country. And it's a social issue with society, but not so much with the political party. Right. And this is the only place where it looks like it's more related to conservative / more racial conscious, whatever, and more, monetary policy.
Basically, it's every issue. Besides race, let's put race aside. Okay, another one that's a very hot button topic. There's a lot of Democrats and liberals who are pro-gun and pro-Second Amendment, but they would never say it in left circles because you're not allowed to say that in those circles. You can be and before it used to be, and this was because of the evangelical right, that basically it was looked at that if you're on the right, you are anti-gay. And that's just not true. Are there people on the right who are anti-gay? Yes. Are all people on the right anti-gay? No, definitely not. I mean, Peter Thiel is an open Republican, and he's openly gay. I mean,
yeah, right.
It's like, but this is the narrative. And that's what I'm saying, that they push these narratives to split everything left, right. That there's no other option, that you can't be a mixture, that you can't be anything else, that you are either on team A or team B, and that's it, and that's your choice.
But the only choice is if we have an independent,
Yes,
whole
and
libertarian or whatever.
The people who say that if you vote independent or vote third party, that you are wasting a vote, can go fuck themselves, okay? Because guess what? If all the people who don't want to vote for Trump, but also think Biden would be a terrible leader, decided, hey, let's actually vote third party, I guarantee you that person would get 30+% of the vote.
Who is the third party?
I don't know.
Well, we don't have
I don't
one.
know.
That's the thing.
But the other reason is that a lot of people don't want to run third party because nobody third party ever wins. And
Well, exactly. But
you have to-
the last time we had an official third party candidate, wasn't that like Ross Perot or something like?
We've had more since then.
I don't remember.
Rand Paul ran as a libertarian. But nobody has ever, as far as having a real chance, Ross Perot was probably the last one. I'm trying to remember if there's anybody who's had a real chance at winning. I don't think so. But that's because of this idea you're wasting your vote. No, because how does politics work? They cater to the votes they need to win. So they don't cater to the people who vote third party because it's a small percentage and it's not worth it to them. But if all of a sudden the third party vote was 30% of the vote, you think they wouldn't cater to those people?
No, I know the numbers.
And
I mean,
so my point
elections
is,
these days are
you can use your vote as a screw you to the system and to the duopoly. And it's not wasting your vote. It's not wasting your vote. I would rather vote third party than compromise myself and vote for a guy like Biden, who I don't believe in at all. First of all, the sexual assault charges, okay, people don't care about that anymore. I thought we did. I think he's senile and he's going to be a terrible leader. I don't think that he's a career politician too, which I definitely don't like voting for career politicians. His son has been involved in numerous scandals in Ukraine, in China. I don't know what's going on there. All that gets swept under the rug. It's like, because he's the anti-Trump, all of these issues that with any other normal candidate would be front and center get swept under the rug. I'm not going to compromise myself and vote for Biden. I would rather vote for third party. And I think if more people took that view and didn't look at it as, oh, I'm wasting my vote, you're not wasting your vote. Because if you send a message and all of a sudden in this election, 20% of the population ends up, or of the voters, vote for third party, that's a serious message. But I think that's what needs to happen for real change. Because I think a lot of the problems we have in the country are we have a duopoly and everything is left right. Everything is left right.
Okay.
The pandemic is left right. Everything.
Let me ask you another question. Back to the situation with the demonstrations and the riots and all that stuff, because this is something that I really don't know what the proper reaction is. But okay, so we had demonstrations, peaceful, most of them, but then we have a minority of demonstrators that caused 90% of the damage. And so you get, let's say that you're a Democrat and you've been closed for like 2-3 months now. You own a restaurant, a small shop, retail, whatever, and you've been closed following the rules and all that stuff, and then you finally open, you get these demonstrations in front of your street, and it's not even in the city where anything happened, whatever. You get these guys that all of a sudden just crash into your store at night, back up a pickup truck, steal everything, and then you have all this damage. You're already totally fucked up from 2-3 months, like trying to survive, paying your employees, doing whatever you can, government loans, all that stuff. And now you get this thing. And then, like in New York, Governor Cuomo basically said, no, we don't want any protection. We want everybody to be allowed to demonstrate. And he basically banned National Guards, whatever, from protecting. What do you do? I mean, I'm thinking, okay, nobody's protecting me.
Right. So okay.
So I don't know how to solve that. If I'm a Democrat, I'm thinking, okay, I have a Democratic governor, and this guy is basically saying it's free for all. If they break into my store that I've been working my life blood, sweat, and tears to survive.
This
Guy is not defending me. So
Okay.
are they forcing me to say, hey, at least Trump is saying, let's bring the military, so somebody has to protect me.
This is the thing.
So
This
how do
this
you
is
solve that?
What I would, when Trump said the looting starts, the shooting starts, that's a horrible
That's
response.
a bad tweet,
And
headline,
so,
whatever.
This is what I think Trump should have said. Okay, this is my speech. If I'm the president, this is my speech. I come out, and this was last week. I would go out on Friday or whenever this kind of started really escalating, and basically say, listen, I totally empathize with the cause. You're right. This is a horrible killing. This is a horrible injustice. We need to make sure that these people get prosecuted, and we need to make sure that we have reforms so that this happens much less often in the future. I can't promise it will never happen again, but we need to make sure this happens much less. And then basically saying, and I totally am pro peaceful demonstration. If you want to go out and protest and make your voice heard, please, I go for it, right? That is your constitutional right. But it is my job to protect people too. And so long as you stay peaceful, nothing's going to happen. You have every right to do so. But if riots continue, if mass looting continues, I will have to step in. I don't want to step in, but I will have to because my job is to make sure people are safe. And that's the message, basically, and make it very clear.
So based on that message,
Instead of just
it's not what he did, but how he said it. Because
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
he basically did what you're saying. If this happens, which did happen, I will have to jump in and bring.
And I wouldn't bring the military, first of
Well,
all.
National Guard is military, okay? So
No, but it's different. The National Guard is in each state. Bringing the U.S. Army to the streets of Los Angeles is a step that I would not take unless the National Guard said we are not able to handle
Well,
it.
I mean, that's the issue. National Guard is in every state, but they don't have enough. In some cases, there's a flaw. It's not different when there's a national
but
when
there's a
there's a national
difference.
disaster, for example, like a
No,
hurricane.
but let me finish. Let me tell you this. The only time, so basically, he's using the Insurrection Act of 1807, and that basically says that the president can send the military against the people in necessary times
protect, yeah.
basically. But not just to protect, but to squash rebellions and things like that. That's what the act is for. But the only time that has ever been used, right, in hurricanes, it's by the state's request. The states say, please send them.
Right.
But he said, very different. He said, if the states don't request it, and I see that they are in trouble, I'm going to send it in against their wishes, basically. The only time that's ever happened was Lyndon B. Johnson when they were basically desegregating schools. And I think, was it Arkansas? I think it was Arkansas, said the governor of Arkansas, who was very racist, put the National Guard to stop black people from getting into the schools. So Lyndon B. Johnson sent in the U.S. military to stop the Arkansas National Guard and said, no, we are doing it. That's the only time it's ever happened.
Well, I think it's happened a couple more times, but
against the will of states. It's happened
Okay.
at states' request, but not against the state's request.
Okay, well,
that's the difference. He's basically saying, which is totally anti-American, because the whole point of America is that you have 50 United States, but they are almost independent states, basically. And that they come together for certain issues, but for the most part, they're independent. And the federal government is supposed to be limited. But now the federal government starts overpowering and says, we have the authority, and against the state's will,
so then
we are going to send in the military
do you,
against the state.
Based on this, do you approve of the decision of Governor Cuomo in New York of saying, no, we're not going to prevent looters and
No, is that what
Right.
he said? I
Yes.
don't know exactly what
He
he
basically said-
Is he sending in the National Guard?
I don't know at this point, but that there was
If he said, I'm going to let looters loot, yeah, that's stupid. That's not doing his job as governor.
he told the police force basically, I want the demonstrators to continue, and there
Yeah,
was no.
you can have... There's first of all, no leader can do anything about peaceful protesters because that's in the Constitution. You're allowed to do that. There's nothing, and if you do, you're breaking constitutional law, and they can take you to court over that. Okay, but like I said, my message would be very clear. Please peacefully protest. I implore you to do so. But if things get violent and the looting continues, I will have to step in. Basically, that's the message. You will give me no choice. So please, as a community, agree. And if you see someone looting, please stop them. Or thinking about looting, please stop them. Because I don't want to step in, but I will have to, you know? It's kind of like if a parent tells their kids, you have like a brother and sister fighting, you don't want to step in, but guess what? If they're, you know, on the verge of killing each other, then yeah, you got to step in. That's how I view it. That's the message. Instead of just saying immediately, I'm going to shut everything down, curfews at 6 p.m. or whatever ridiculous times they were setting. Yes, it is very much about what you say and how you say it. That matters a lot. It's having a clear, empathetic message instead of just saying, fuck you, we're squashing this.
Let's start wrapping up this particular topic. So what do you think will happen from here? I mean, will this just fade out over time?
I can't predict it. I have no idea. I didn't see this coming to how it did so fast. So
well, but that's the topic that I started with. I think it's coming so fast because the media and now social media too has this snowball effect where they make something that is, whether it's not that important or in this case it's very important, but they emphasize so many headlines and controversial topics and highlighting the negativity of the situation that they make the snowball effect much more than it would have been in other times. Like we were talking about Rodney King in the beginning. That was 1992, if I remember, and that was like lots of riots in LA and everything else, but it was basically concentrated to LA. It didn't happen, to the extent that this is happening worldwide now. Even Ferguson, the same thing. I mean, we had like different things. Or that Trayvon Martin in Florida, the kid, and that wasn't even a cop.
That was Baltimore riots a few years ago.
Right, exactly. So it looks like now, and again, to go back to Trump, I mean, he is the biggest user of social media, particularly Twitter, as far as instigating even more headlines. But I actually think, I think social media and the media in general, but when you watch TV, you're watching this channel or this other channel, like you watch MSNBC and you like this, you know what you're going to get. You watch Fox News, you know what you're going to get, all that stuff.
Right, and when I talk about narratives, it's never more clear. If you want to understand the narratives that basically the parties are trying to push, whenever there's a hot topic like this, go watch MSNBC, see what they're saying. Change the channel, go to Fox News, see what... They're so obvious about it.
But that's right. And then you have viewers for one or the other, and then CNN is all over the place too. But when you go to social media, you don't have that kind of affiliation in theory, okay? In theory,
but in practice, you do. I mean, you can just go to people's accounts and see that. All they tweet is left stuff or right
you also
stuff.
Decide who you follow, who you don't follow, and other stuff. And so on TV, you basically have an anchor that is just giving you the news with his personal opinion, all that stuff. So, but I think, I think social media, not just in this particular case, but even during the pandemic, doing whatever effect or whatever event happens in the world, whether it's sporting, acting, this and that, or whatever, or politics, it really is created. I mean, you have programmers and developers of social media platforms, as you know, that tweak the algorithm to encourage this kind of interaction, and they're instigators of exchanges between users. Okay, let's just put it that way to be neutral. But that's how they make money, because they have more engagement, they have more ads they can place and everything else. So that's how it works. So when you have a program or a platform that is basically working hard to instigate the fact that you go there and you say, I'm going to check Twitter for 5 minutes, and before you know it, you're spending 50 minutes checking something. You go to Facebook to look at something quickly, and then you start going through a timeline, and it's like, holy shit, I spent an hour.
This gets into a different topic.
That's a different topic. I know.
But I want to mention on that. I think that we are going through a transitionary period where basically for the first 10,000 years of civilization, we did not have instantaneous global communication tools that were free for everybody. And now we do. And we're still, and yeah, we've had it for, years now. But really, I mean, social media, I would say, as far as mass adoption, has really only been what, like 7-8 years probably. I mean, it existed before that, but as far as like hundreds of millions, billions of people using it, it's not even been 10 years really. Probably around 2012 is when it really exploded, I would say. So it hasn't even been 10 years. I just think we're not used to it yet, and I think we'll learn. And I think that in the same way, you know, there's this new kind of philosophy, I guess you could call it, of information diet. In the same way that everybody knows, okay, if I just eat candy all day or donuts all day or whatever, name your junk food, that I'm gonna be unhealthy. And so having candy in a small amount as a treat or whatever is fine. You'll be fine. But if your diet consists 90% of candy, okay, you're gonna be unhealthy. Well, I think the same is true of information diets. If 90% of your information diet comes from watching TV and going on social media, that it's like basically eating bowls of candy.
So should social media count like with a cigarette warning saying, warning, the use of social media
I don't know if social media
is
needs
dangerous
that.
to your mental health. You will spend more time than you wish doing this thing.
I just
It's
think
addictive.
people need to acknowledge it. And I think more and more people are now. And in the same way that people limit the amount of basically foods that they eat and watch their personal diet, they should watch their informational diet, basically.
So
and I think that's going to happen.
But by doing that, you're putting the responsibility on the people, not so much on the social media platforms.
I'll say this too. I think that it would be on the people. It always is on the people ultimately, right? Like cigarettes have big warnings. Nobody is unclear about the dangers of cigarettes, but people still smoke. If that's your choice, fine, go for it. That's your choice. You know the consequences, okay? So I think of it the same way of social media. And by the way, social media is not cigarettes, okay? There's plenty of good on social media, but there's also lots of bad. And the bad part is that, like you said, negative things can explode faster than ever. And I think that's the biggest consequence of social media. But I think that platforms will evolve and change over time. I think that new platforms will pop up. I think that current platforms will change, and that people will be more aware. And I think it's just new, and that we're in a transition period. And also the majority of people went from a world where social media did not exist to where it does now. And I think that the young Gen Z, the teenagers and stuff who basically grew up with social media, treat it much differently than adults do. I mean, this is just very well known.
That's the same thing for all kinds of media and everything. I mean, younger people don't even watch TV. They're always on their own.
I don't watch TV.
Right, exactly.
I do not watch TV.
Whereas older people or more mature people, or adult people, whatever, they use for entertainment. Like they watch sports on TV, movies on TV, and all that stuff.
I watch sports. That's the only thing I watch.
But you also watch a lot of sports on your phone, on a tablet, or some kind of mobile device on your computer.
If I can. Yeah.
Right. So the consumption of media is changing towards. It's funny because we went through all these big screens and now it's kind of going to smaller screens. It's the opposite direction. But so one final question or comment. In this particular situation, if this happens, as you said, social media has evolved a lot over the past 7, 8, 9, 10 years. If this happens exactly the same situation 10 years ago, you think it would have escalated like it is now?
No, because it did happen 10 years ago. It's been happening for a long time.
Exactly.
So no. This is my final. We can talk more next week on the social media side of things because we didn't even get it to Zuckerberg and all of that.
Yeah, that's another.
But we can get into that next week. Who knows? Maybe there'll be a ton of new changes by next week. And even like there was a thing on the New York Times opinion that they published an op-ed from Senator Cotton from I think Arkansas, and he basically was very pro using the military against people and all that. And obviously the New York Times these days is known as a very left-leaning newspaper, and the majority of people that subscribe to it are left-leaning, and they were not happy that the New York Times published that op-ed. But the New York Times replied and basically made a public statement saying, we want to publish, especially because this guy's a senator and is in power, that we want to publish both sides of the opinions and make people aware, especially because this guy has the ability to, we're not agreeing with him, but he has the ability to vote things into legislation. And so it's important to be aware of his opinion, even if you don't agree with it. And a lot of people didn't take that as a good answer and hated them. Mm-hmm. I'm not a big New York Times fan. I agree with them in this case. I totally disagree with Senator Cotton. I think he's a moron for thinking that we should send the military in and use brute force against protesters. But you need to understand the opinions, especially of people in power. If he was just some random Joe, but he's a senator. He has legislative power. So you need to know their opinions, basically, if you're going to fight against them. But a lot of people didn't agree with that. And this is the New York Times. I mean, this is a newspaper that is very left-leaning, and the majority of their subscribers are left-leaning people. And they got a lot of backfire for it. And I think I was actually happy that they stood their ground and didn't just remove it. But basically, my final point is, in the moment, it's easy to think the world is ending. And, oh, my God, we have pandemics and all these riots, blah, blah. Listen, people have been through shit for a long time.
No, I never thought. Yeah.
One of the reasons why I love reading history so much is because it does repeat itself. We've had plagues, we've had riots. If you want to read the closest thing of what you can kind of expect to happen in the United States, go read the history of Rome, because basically everything that's happening in the U.S. happened already in Rome, just at a different pace.
No,
They had civil wars, they had
I
riots,
agree.
they had racial injustices, they had slaves, they had slave revolts. All of this happened before. And it's been happening for a long time.
But it's frustrating the fact on the racial issue. It's frustrating the fact that we are unable to fix it or to just get over it, basically,
Yes.
in a good way.
I totally agree.
Because in this case, I mean, in this case, it's a fatal situation where the backup killed this person, but there's racial issues on daily society uses. I mean, I don't care. You apply for a loan and you're black versus white, and then you're treated differently, or you get into, like you said, you are late in a park and you come across a black guy and you feel threatened. He's a white guy. Hey, how you doing? You know, it's just, I don't know. I mean, it's really screwed up that we still have those issues, you know, and they happen every day. I mean, if you're a black person, you deal with that stuff daily, and it's you know, it repeats itself. And this is one of the cases where it's too bad that it repeats itself. It should be a situation where we are all, like I said, we're given this implant where we don't see races, and then we're all the same. Okay, we can see everything else in society. Our colors are
But here's the thing.
But
in the U.S., the bigger problem is racism. People. It's unfortunate, but first of all, racism is not an American thing. I think a lot of Americans think that because
it's worldwide.
It's a worldwide thing, and there's even racism between, like, as far as Americans go, we look at them and they all look like they're the same race to us, but they aren't. I mean, go ask. The average American probably cannot look at an Indian and a Pakistani and tell the difference. I mean, that's just the truth. They hate each other. Okay,
but that's more country rivalry than racial.
It's multiple things. There's also religious. I mean, look at the Sunni and the Shia.
Yeah.
Look at the Hindus and the Muslims in Pakistan and India. Look at in China how they treat the Uyghurs. I mean, it's everywhere. By the way, China coming out and talking about Black Lives Matter. Screw you. First of all, China just a few months ago was having getting called out because they were persecuting black people in China. And Tibet and the Uyghurs, China can fuck off, okay?
Well,
Thank
we
you
know
very
that,
much.
yes.
It's unfortunately, it's a human thing that we love to find reasons to hate each other, whether it's classism, whether it's racism, whether it's religious beliefs. I don't know if we'll ever totally get past that. Even in the U.S., I think people talk about racism a lot. I think people don't talk enough about classism in the United States.
Yeah, well,
or about tribalism between left and right, like I was just saying. I mean, there's plenty of Republicans and Democrats who hate the other side. They literally hate. There are Democrats who openly say, I hate Republicans, and Republicans who say, I hate Democrats.
Yeah, that's fine. But,
and that's so I don't know if it'll ever totally go away. The difference is making change at the levels of power so that one group does not have power over another. That's the difference. And that's what we still haven't solved. It's gotten better, but we haven't solved it, basically.
Right.
But we'll get through it. We've gone through everything. We'll get through it. That's my message.
All right, David, that was great. Thanks for your time. Yeah, this has been a little bit of
not our usual topics.
Not our usual topics.
In my newsletter this week, the Ecom Edge, it was on Tuesday, and Tuesday was the day everybody was doing the blackout
It's the
thing.
Blackout Tuesday, yeah.
And I was like, I talked to you, and I was like, should we send this? I was like, I
No,
don't
that's
think we
fine.
should
I mean,
send
we don't
it,
want to be.
so-
I mean, we've been
So I
discussing
basically
this.
just said-
This is like the topic that is being in everybody's mind.
No one
everywhere.
cares about econ tactics right now.
And it's one of those things where you err if you don't talk about it, and you err you talk about it too much, and you say one thing and it could be taken the other way. It's a very tough issue, and hopefully everybody will be able to take us. Just kind of sit back and take a little step backwards and look at the bigger picture. And like you said, this is not.
But you also have to put morals over money. I think that's the problem with a lot of businesses is they don't want to put morals over
But
money.
I always like to, when I have a big issue, big problem, whatever, I like to compartmentalize it and separate facts. And it's like I said in the beginning, we have the killing was brutal. The peaceful demonstrations is a logical reaction that is happening, is fine. But then the looting and the riots and stuff, that's the part where people start crossing the line. And unfortunately, those people are not the ones that are demonstrating for the killing of George Floyd. They are basically having selfish interests that have no fucking clue what they do, and they're just taking advantage of the situation to go into a store and steal whatever. And we've seen stupid videos of people walking with a cheesecake or fuck like that, So, and then you see the government responses, and then how they express. So when you start compartmentalizing the facts, and you say, okay, this needs to be fixed, this is normal, and we need to enforce these peaceful demonstrations to give more public awareness, but all that stuff needs to be having an effect down the road. Like, are we getting better? Is this tragic death going to make us better as a society, or are we in 6 months going to forget it, and then 3 years later something happens and we do the same thing again?
I think it will.
Do we learn
I
from
think
all
this-
these situations?
I think we will.
I hope so. I hope so, because I definitely don't want to see
I
this.
think if anything, all of this between the pandemics and rioting and everything that's happened this year, I definitely think that we'll come out much stronger because of this.
Yeah,
do
I mean,
think so.
one thing I've noticed during the pandemic is that when you go to stores or drive-throughs and things like that, not stores inside, but drive-through stuff, people are super nice. They're like even, I mean, everybody's edgy when they are doing stuff, but then on a personal person-to-person interaction, people are usually a little more warmer, and they're trying to compensate for this bad situation that we're going through, to say, hey, we're still humans and we still kind of need social interaction. And I don't know. I mean, I'm optimistic as you are, and we have very interesting 6 months ahead of us, specifically elections. I don't know at what point the elections are going to get but the headlines these days. Normally in any other election year, we'll be talking elections for the last 5 months, and now it's like one thing after another. Now that the Republican convention, it looks like it's going to be moved because North Carolina is not allowing the social distance rules or whatever. So we'll see what happens. But
I also wanted to, one final note that I wanted to mention. I think when a lot of people talk about systemic issues, most people feel like, what am I going to do about that? What am I going to do about the justice system? What control do I have? Or in everyday life, racial prejudice, whatever. What you can do is you can control what you do. You can control your actions, basically. And if everybody controls their actions, that you can make real difference. And so if you're, like, lots of VCs now are talking about, oh, we need more diversity and inclusion. It's like, okay, well, how about you start by hiring black VCs or funding black founders, things like that. Put your money where your mouth is. And that goes for everybody, right? It's like, I understand that saying, like, for me, it's like, okay, do I think we need systemic change? Yeah. What am I going to do about it? I don't know. I don't know how to make systemic change, but I can control what I do in everyday life.
Right. No, it's
right. I can control how I talk and treat people. I can control who I do and don't work with. And if everybody does those things, that's how you can make change.
Yeah, everybody is making decisions, even if their decision is not to act. That in itself is a decision. So yeah, it's basically with all of us. So, and with that, we'll wrap it up for today. David, again, thank you very much, and we always welcome your comments. This is a very delicate issue, but an issue that needs to be spoken about, and we wanted to also just give our opinion. This is totally unscripted, so we're giving you our thoughts as they come, and but definitely just comment, whether it's on your podcast platform or YouTube, whatever you get to see this podcast. Just give us your thoughts and support us, and for sure do something about it yourself, so we can all stop talking about these things in the future and just talk about other stuff. So until next week, this is Manuel and David from MGR Unplugged. Thank you very much. Goodbye, everybody.